In this video, we'll be looking at the function of prepositional phrases inside verb phrases. They can function either as adjuncts or as complements of the verb. Alright, so we're going to start with prepositional phrases as VP adjuncts. Okay? When they're occurring as VP adjuncts, there's no particular selection between the verb phrase or the verb and the prepositional phrase adjunct. So you can have a variety of verb phrases like he sang, danced a jig, drank beer, gave people hugs, had fun, remained upset. So these are different verb phrases occurring with or without an object or with a predicative complement. And they can each occur with just a full range of prepositional phrase adjuncts like for an hour, at work, with a friend, on the boat, in the choir, until noon, on Tuesday, by the door, beneath the bleachers, aboard the plane, or without shame. Okay, so most events that verbs describe will take place in some location in space and time, and so it's pretty easy to just add a prepositional phrase describing those events, again with no particular connection between the verb and the prepositional phrase. Okay, since it occurs as an adjunct, we know that this will be the rule that we'll have to have, so we'll have to have a prepositional phrase can combine with a verb phrase to give us a bigger verb phrase. So let's take a look at an example. Okay, so we can take a look at this sentence. We drank beer at the bar for an hour, and see how we would put that together using our prepositional phrase adjunct rule. Okay? Here we've got two prepositional phrases, at the bar and for an hour, so let's go ahead and give the structure for those. The most prototypical prepositions have noun phrase objects. Okay, so here for an hour, we've got an hour as the object of the preposition. Okay, for is the preposition. We can combine those together to make a prepositional phrase. Okay, so there's the preposition plus the noun phrase to make a prepositional phrase. All right, then we also have at the bar. Okay, again, has a noun phrase complement or object for the preposition. The preposition is at, and we can combine those two things to make the prepositional phrase at the bar. Okay. All right, we know these are both VP adjuncts. They just locate this in time and space. They don't have a particular connection to the verb drink. We could put in a whole bunch of other verbs in here. We laughed at the bar for an hour. We got upset at the bar for an hour, etc. All right, so we want to draw those in as adjuncts. Before we do that, we need to build up our VP. So remember, we always want to combine complements before we combine adjuncts. Okay, so let's see. We've got our verb here, drink. That goes with the object of the verb, drink beer. Okay, so we need to combine those first to make in our first or smallest verb phrase. Okay. All right, once we've done that, then we can go ahead and combine in our prepositional phrases to make larger verb phrases. Okay, so the prepositional phrase will combine with the verb phrase to make a bigger verb phrase. Okay, and the same thing here. With the second prepositional phrase, again, they're just going to combine in one at a time. They don't combine with each other first to make that. Okay. All right, now we built up our predicate, and then of course we add in our subject, and that combines with the predicate to make the sentence. Okay, so there would be the structure for we drank beer at the bar for an hour. In addition to being adjuncts, prepositional phrases can also occur as complements of the verb. So there are cases where particular verbs select particular prepositional phrases to go with them. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. There's various types. One common type we find is with verbs of motion, so verbs that describe a change in location from one position to another. A verb like go or come or run. Okay, verbs of motion often occur with prepositional phrase complements referring to the goal or source. The goal refers to the direction where the movement is taking place, and the source tells you where it's coming from. Okay, so in a sentence like we went to the party, we have to the party as our prepositional phrase, and that's telling you the goal, our destination. Okay. We can tell that this is a complement and not an adjunct because if we try to change the verb or the smaller verb phrase, we can't do it. So we cried to the party doesn't really work out. You'd have to say something like we cried all the way to the party. We knew to the party. We hugged to the party. None of those work out. So that helps us to see that went specifically allows these kinds of prepositional phrases. Similarly with the sentence like they came from work, here we have from work as our prepositional phrase, and that tells you our origin, where we're coming from. Okay, so that's the source. And again, trying to change the verb to something else, they laughed from work, they sang from work, they hugged from work. Sounds a little bit odd. With these kinds of verbs, we can in fact get both the source and goal together. So we ran from New York to LA. Here we've got two prepositional phrases occurring, one telling you the source, one telling you the goal. Okay? And again, it's dependent on particular verbs. We knew from New York to LA is a little bit strange, although it does seem like when you have both the source and goal, they are possibly able to function as adjuncts. Okay? That doesn't to me sound as bad as some of these others up here. All right. Now, while the verb has to have a prepositional phrase or picks a prepositional phrase as its complement, there is some variety in what the preposition can be as long as it's consistent with some sort of motion, right? So we drove to Dallas, through Dallas, around Dallas, or across Dallas. All of those are possible. All right, and with certain verbs, they require static location prepositional phrases or can take those as their complements. And for some of these, we can see that the prepositional phrase is actually required for it to be grammatical. Without it, it's ungrammatical. So in fact, if we say something like the remote is, it's kind of a strange sentence by itself, so we need to supply some sort of prepositional phrase. So the remote is beside the TV. Okay. All right, so that'll help us complete our sentence there, so we can help us see if it's complement. Same thing with he resides. We need something with it. He resides on campus. He resides alone is ungrammatical. Now, for some of these, you just have to think about the particular meaning of the verb. Does it seem to require a location with it? Sometimes they do, but sometimes they optionally take the prepositional phrase complement with them. Okay? All right, so we can capture these guys with these rules. So we're saying that a prepositional phrase can occur as a complement of a verb, and sometimes you can get both a source and a goal prepositional phrase, complement combining with a verb. Okay, so here we'll have two prepositional phrases combining with a verb to give us a VP. All right, let's look at some examples. So let's start with a simple example, something like he went to the store. So here we've got the prepositional phrase to the store. This is a verb of motion, so we know that the prepositional phrase is going to be a complement of the verb. Okay? The prepositional phrase, as is standard, or as most common, has a noun phrase, object, so we have that. Okay, then we'll have the preposition there. And then we'll combine these two things together to make the prepositional phrase to the store. Okay, so the preposition plus the noun phrase. All right, then it's going to be a complement of the verb. All right, so it'll need to combine directly with the verbal head to give us the verb phrase went to the store, which will give us this structure. All right, so that gives us went to the store as our verb phrase. All right, and then of course we just add in our subject as always to make the complete sentence. All right, before we go ahead and draw the S note up here, look, now that we've got this structure built up, we've got a VP here. We could have a VP adjunct occurring with it as well, or a prepositional phrase adjunct for this VP occurring as well, something like he went to the store after work, telling when it happened and not particularly related to the verb. All right, so let's just look what that structure would look like. So if we added in this after work, then we can have that as a prepositional phrase adjunct occurring. Okay? In that case, it would combine with the verb phrase to make a bigger verb phrase. So just because we have a prepositional phrase complement doesn't preclude having a prepositional phrase adjunct as well in the same sentence. Now we can go ahead and combine this into a sentence, and there we go. We have the structure for he went to the store after work. Now when we have both source and goal prepositional phrases, they'll both serve as complements of the verb. All right, so in a sentence like Forrest ran from New York to Los Angeles, we've got two prepositional phrases. To Los Angeles will be one prepositional phrase. All right, and from New York as the other prepositional phrase. Now, since these are both complements of the verb, these will combine directly with the verb to give us our verb phrase. Okay, so we'll need to combine all three of these together at once to make our verb phrase. Okay, and then we add in our subject, and now we have the sentence, Forrest ran from New York to Los Angeles. In addition to verbs that take prepositional phrase complements directly after them, there's also transitive verbs that take prepositional phrase complements. So transitive verbs are going to have an object as well as the prepositional phrase as their complements. And these usually fall into two types again. So these fall into the types where, again, we have a verb of motion, except this time we're taking an object with us. So take is the good example. I took the new hire on a tour. Okay? We walked the employee from the building. Here you can clearly see from the building must be a complement. If we left it out, we walked the employee, that would change the meaning completely. It makes it sound like we're walking a dog or something like that. All right, and some other examples here. The teacher brought the students to campus. Life took her from Milan to Minsk. Okay, so there again we have both the source and the goal along with an object complement. Okay, so this verb would have three complements in this case. All right, the other type that we see of this type is the put type, where you have a static location associated with the verb to that's occurring as a complement. So they put the books on the shelves. Okay, so that's telling you where they put the books. Okay? And again, if you say they put the books without on the shelves, you can see it doesn't work out. Okay? And similar verbs here. We set the glasses on the table. I slipped a card inside the envelope. He slid the game piece along the line. Okay, so in all of these, we have an object like the game piece. The game piece was slid along the line, plus a prepositional phrase complement. So our rules will look like this for such sentences. So here we can see for like a put type verb, I put, there's the verb put, and then what you put, the books on the shelves. Okay, so this will be a verb that has both a noun phrase, object, and a prepositional phrase complement. And of course, with these verbs of motion, they can sometimes have both source and goal prepositional phrases, so you can get two complements in those cases. All right, let's look at some examples. With a sentence like, we carefully placed the books on the shelves, we've got the object, the books, and then we have on the shelves as our prepositional phrase. Okay, again, they're going to both be complements of the verb, so let's take a look at how that'll be. All right, so here's the structures for our object and our prepositional phrase. They're going to be complements of the verb, which means we're going to combine all three of those things together at once to make the verb phrase. Okay, so there's the verb and the object. We add in the prepositional phrase, put our label on it, and now we've got our verb phrase. For good measure, I threw in an adverb here. We carefully placed the books on the shelves. Okay, so now that we've got a verb phrase in place, it'll combine with the verb phrase to make a bigger verb phrase. Okay. You know, we could go ahead and add in other adjuncts here as well. So we carefully placed the books on the shelves last night. All right, and then once we've got that, we go ahead and add in our subject, and now we have our sentence. We carefully placed the books on the shelves. All right, so that'll give us the structure for these sentences, again, where we have some sort of either goal, source, or locative prepositional phrase plus a verb with an object. All right, in the second part, we'll take a look at some other verbs with prepositional phrase complements.